China just built an electric motorcycle that charges its battery to 80% in 10 minutes flat, and if that doesn't stop you in your tracks, consider this. The gas engine sitting in your garage needs about 3 minutes at a fuel pump, and for a century that gap was considered untouchable. A Chinese company just got to within 7 minutes of closing it. That is not a minor engineering tweak. That is a structural shift in what electric two-wheeled transportation can be. And when you look at who built it, how they built it, and what it means for the American motorcycle industry, the picture gets a great deal more serious than most people realize. In this video, we are going to dive deep into this new wave of Chinese electric motorcycle engineering and show you exactly why these machines are not just changing how people commute. They are reshaping the global transportation battlefield in ways that Detroit and Washington are only now beginning to understand. Welcome to Chinese Revolution. It is now mid-2025, and the global race for electric two-wheeler supremacy has reached a genuine tipping point. As an analyst tracking these massive international developments, it is clear that the landscape of personal transportation is undergoing a profound structural shift, one that is being driven not from a boardroom in Milwaukee or a design studio in California, but from manufacturing floors in Wuxi, Jiangsu Province, and engineering labs in Beijing. The question is not whether American riders will eventually sit on a Chinese electric motorcycle. The question is whether our own domestic manufacturers will still be relevant when that moment arrives. Let us set the stage with a number that should command your full attention. According to market analysis by Global Market Insights, the global electric motorcycle and scooter market was valued at around $36.4 billion in 2024, and it is projected to reach over $110 billion by 2034, a compound growth rate of roughly 12% per year for an entire decade. That is not a niche market. That is one of the fastest-growing segments in all of transportation. And when you look at who controls that market today, the answer is blunt and unambiguous. China accounts for roughly 55% of the Asia-Pacific electric motorcycle market, generating an estimated $14.5 billion in revenue in a single year. And here is the number that should make every legacy executive in the American motorcycle industry lose sleep tonight. By most credible industry estimates, China produces over 70% of the world's electric two-wheelers. 70%. That means for every 10 electric motorcycles rolling off a factory floor somewhere on this planet, 7 of them came from China. While American manufacturers have been debating how to position their legacy combustion engine brands in a world moving toward electrification, Chinese manufacturers have been building factories, refining battery technology, and expanding to over 60 countries simultaneously. That is the recurring reality that runs through every single story we cover on this channel. While America debates, China builds. Now, to understand how we got here, and more importantly, where this is headed, you need to understand the company at the center of this story. The company is called Yadea, and if you have not heard that name before, that is precisely the point. Yadea was founded in 2001 and is headquartered in Wuxi, Jiangsu Province, in eastern China. For most of its early existence, it was quietly building electric scooters for the enormous Chinese domestic market, the kind of low-speed, practical machines that tens of millions of Chinese city dwellers rely on every single day. Nobody in the American press was writing about Yadea in 2005. Nobody in Detroit was worried about Yadea in 2010. The company was just there, manufacturing, refining, scaling year after year after year, mostly invisible to the Western world. Then something changed. Yadea did not stay in its lane. The company began systematically upgrading its technology stack, investing in battery management systems, expanding its engineering teams, building out its international distribution networks, and critically hiring world-class design talent to make products that could compete on a global stage. Today, Yadea is recognized by multiple industry sources as the world's largest electric two-wheeler manufacturer, exporting to over 100 countries. We are talking about nearly 20 million vehicles sold worldwide per year. That is not a regional player. That is a global industrial force. And then, in November of 2023, Yadea walked into EICMA, the world's largest motorcycle trade show, held in Milan, Italy, and unveiled a machine that turned every head in the building. The motorcycle is called the Yadea Kemper, and it did not just announce Yadea's arrival in the high-performance motorcycle segment. It delivered a technological statement that no established Western brand could immediately answer. Here is what the Kemper actually is. The Kemper is a naked sport motorcycle, what riders in the US would recognize as a Street Fighter style, built around a centrally mounted 40-kilowatt peak electric motor. To translate that into terms that make sense for a rider on American roads, the Kemper produces the equivalent of roughly 53 horsepower at peak output, and it reaches 62 miles per hour in 4.9 seconds. The top speed sits at approximately 99 miles per hour, just under that triple-digit threshold. In the Street Fighter category, those are genuinely competitive numbers that put the bike in direct conversation with a lot of what the established Japanese and European brands have been selling in the mid-range performance segment for years. But the motor performance is not the headline. The headline is the battery technology. The Kemper uses a 3.20-volt, 2.0-amp-hour lithium iron phosphate battery, a chemistry choice that matters enormously. Lithium iron phosphate, often called LFP, is chemically more stable, more thermally resistant, and capable of far more charge-discharge cycles over its lifetime than conventional lithium-ion cells. The trade-off has historically been energy density. LFP packs tend to be heavier and less energy-dense than competing chemistries. But Yadea's engineering team appears to have accepted that trade-off deliberately, because what they built around it is genuinely remarkable. The Kemper charges from 0 to 80% in 10 minutes. Not 30 minutes, not 20 minutes, 10 minutes. To put that in perspective, the industry standard for a fast-charging electric motorcycle before the Kemper was somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes for a near-full charge. That was already considered a major leap forward from the multi-hour charging times of just a few years earlier. But 30 to 45 minutes still cannot compete with a fuel stop. 10 minutes can come close. According to reporting by Electrek, which covered the EICMA 2023 debut firsthand, this 10-minute figure represents charging to 80% using the Type 2 connector at a 320-volt charging station. The Kemper also supports the CCS Combo 2 connector standard, giving riders access to a wider network of compatible charging infrastructure across Europe and, increasingly, in the United States. Think about what that practically means for a rider. You pull into a charging station, you take off your helmet, you check your phone, you respond to a text, you drink half a bottle of water, and your motorcycle is already at 80%. That is a fundamentally different proposition than every other electric motorcycle that has existed before it. This is not incremental progress. This is a category redefinition. The safety and technology package that surrounds this powertrain reads like a checklist from a premium European manufacturer. The Kemper comes equipped with Bosch dual-channel ABS and traction control. The braking hardware is Brembo, with a 4-piston radial caliper at the front. The suspension uses KYB components. The instrument cluster is a 7-inch color TFT screen displaying real-time battery status, tire pressure, temperature, and vehicle diagnostics. There is an integrated 1080p high-definition dashcam with automatic incident recording. And the whole system is tied together with a Yadea Smart Assistant, a smartphone application that handles keyless entry, GPS tracking, and security alerts. The controller efficiency, according to Yadea's own laboratory testing, reaches 98%, meaning virtually no electrical energy going into that controller is wasted as heat. The design of the Kemper was developed in partnership with Kiska, the Austrian design agency that has spent decades creating the visual identity of KTM motorcycles. That is not an accident. Yadea specifically went out and hired one of the most respected motorcycle design firms in Europe to make sure the Kemper would look at home next to any premium machine in a dealership showroom. The aesthetic is forward-leaning, aggressive, unmistakably performance-oriented. Now, here is where the geopolitical frame of this story becomes unavoidable. While Western motorcycle manufacturers Harley-Davidson, Zero Motorcycles, and the legacy Japanese brands were either resisting the electric transition, navigating internal corporate debates, or struggling to hit the performance benchmarks their premium-priced electric models promised, Yadea was executing. The company did not rush a half-finished product to market just to claim a headline. It spent years developing the LFP battery chemistry, the high-voltage charging architecture, the motor and controller efficiency, and then it took that finished product to the biggest motorcycle trade show on Earth and let the hardware speak. What links these two approaches, the American hesitation and the Chinese execution, is the deep structural difference between how the two countries currently approach industrial policy in the EV space. China has been running a coordinated industrial strategy for electric vehicles since at least the 2010s, with government subsidies, research incentives, and infrastructure investment all pointed in the same direction. Our domestic manufacturers, by contrast, have faced a patchwork of state-level EV mandates, federal policy uncertainty, and a consumer base that remains deeply skeptical of electric vehicles in the traditional motorcycle segment. The result is not hard to see. What do you think about Chinese manufacturers entering the premium performance motorcycle segment with this kind of technology? Have you ever ridden an electric motorcycle, or would you consider making the switch? Share your personal experiences and detailed thoughts in the comments section right below, because this conversation matters. Now, Yadea is not the only Chinese company rewriting the rules of electric motorcycling. And I know some of you might be thinking about clicking away because you feel like the story is already told: one company, one bike. But hold on, because the broader picture of what China has assembled in this industry is about to completely change how you see this competition. NIU Technologies is a Beijing-based electric motorcycle company that took a very different architectural path than Yadea. NIU, founded in 2014, built its entire brand identity around smart connectivity and urban practicality, and it has been exporting electric two-wheelers to Europe and North America for years. The company went public on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, which means it has been filing financial disclosures in English and reporting to American investors a level of transparency that makes it more directly visible to Western markets than many of its competitors. NIU's flagship performance motorcycle is the RQi Sport. The RQi Sport uses a 7,500-watt electric motor with 450 Nm of wheel torque. And for context, 450 Nm is an almost absurd figure for a motorcycle in this class. A typical 125cc gasoline motorcycle produces somewhere in the range of 10 to 12 Nm of torque. The NIU RQi Sport produces 45 times that amount. The reason it does not translate into terrifying top speed is that the motor's peak power is capped at around 10 horsepower to comply with A1 motorcycle license classifications. In Europe, a deliberate regulatory tuning decision rather than a technology limitation. But in real-world urban riding, that torque figure means the RQi Sport surges off the line in a way that surprises experienced riders. The sprint from 0 to 50 km per hour, roughly 31 miles per hour, takes just 2.9 seconds in boost mode. The battery architecture of the RQi Sport takes a completely different approach from the Kemper's fixed high-voltage pack. The RQi runs two removable 7.2-volt, 3.6-amp-hour battery packs together, providing just over 5 kilowatt-hours of usable energy. The claimed range sits at approximately 125 miles under combined urban and highway conditions. The critical word there is removable. Because when you live in an apartment building in Chicago, or Houston, or Los Angeles, and you have no garage and no dedicated parking spot with a charging outlet, removable batteries completely change the logistics equation. You take the batteries out, you carry them upstairs, you plug them into a standard outlet, and you charge them overnight in your living room. No charging cable draped across a parking lot. No permission from a building manager to install an outlet. The bike meets you where you actually live. The RQi Sport entered the European market at a price point of approximately €7,999, roughly equivalent to around $8,700 at recent exchange rates, and comes equipped with Pirelli tires, a Brembo radial caliper, dual-channel ABS, and a full suite of smart connectivity features including GPS tracking, a TFT color display, and front and rear dashcams. NIU rounds out the package with a smartphone app integrated into the Alipay ecosystem, giving delivery riders and commuters route optimization and remote diagnostics in real time. Now let us pull back from the individual machines and look at the industrial architecture that makes all of this possible, because this is where the story moves from impressive to genuinely strategic. The entire supply chain advantage that Chinese electric motorcycle manufacturers hold over their Western competitors comes down to one word: integration. China does not just assemble electric motorcycles. China mines the raw materials, refines the battery components, manufactures the cells, builds the battery management systems, produces the motors and controllers, designs the chassis, and ships the finished product, often all within a few hundred miles of each other. That level of vertical integration produces a cost efficiency that is structurally impossible to replicate in a country where those supply chains do not exist domestically. When a company like Yadea needs to iterate on a battery chemistry, it can work directly with domestic cell manufacturers in the same country, under the same industrial policy framework, with supply chain partners it has built long-term relationships with. When an American motorcycle startup needs a battery pack, it typically sources it from Asia anyway, paying export costs, navigating supply chain disruptions, and dealing with lead times measured in months rather than weeks. This is not a technology gap. This is an infrastructure gap, and infrastructure gaps take decades to close, not quarters. The broader motorcycle market data reinforces just how large the Chinese footprint has become. According to available market research, approximately 54 original equipment manufacturers currently operate in China's electric motorcycle space. 54, competing against each other, driving down costs, accelerating innovation cycles, and pushing the technology frontier forward in ways that no single American or European manufacturer can match with internal resources alone. The brands that have emerged from this hyper-competitive domestic environment: Yadea, NIU, AIMA, Tailg, Surron, Zeiho, and others have been battle-hardened in the most demanding consumer market on Earth before they ever showed up at a European trade show or applied for a US DOT certification. They are not entering Western markets as underdogs, hoping to find a niche. They are entering as established industrial powers, looking to convert domestic dominance into global market share. Surron, for example, a Chinese company founded in 2014 that specializes in compact electric off-road motorcycles, has built a remarkable international following with its Light B and Storm B models. Reports have noted that the Surron Light BX has even been adopted by military forces in multiple countries for short-range reconnaissance operations. That is a Chinese-manufactured electric motorcycle being used in active defense applications by foreign militaries. Think about what that sentence means from a geopolitical standpoint. Arctic Leopard, another Chinese manufacturer, is described by Tencent News as the world's first company to produce titanium alloy and chromoly steel versions of electric trial and enduro motorcycles. Their flagship Cheetah series, designed for Dakar rally competition, delivers a maximum power output of around 37 kilowatts over 49 horsepower with a wheel torque figure of 880 Newton-meters. The price range for the competition-grade Cheetah series sits between approximately $5,700 and $7,100. A Dakar-class electric race bike, built in China, priced below an entry-level Harley-Davidson street model. Let that sink in for a moment. And while all of this has been unfolding in the performance and off-road segments, the commercial delivery sector has been undergoing its own quiet revolution. Tailji's Kangqiong series delivery motorcycle features a 7.2-volt graphene battery with a claimed range of approximately 200 kilometers, about 124 miles per charge, specifically engineered for the brutal, daily demand cycles of last-mile delivery operations. In China's booming gig economy, electric delivery motorcycles are not a lifestyle choice. They are a commercial infrastructure. And the companies that master that commercial infrastructure at scale develop manufacturing, service, and logistics competencies that transfer directly to consumer markets. What all of this means for the American rider and for our domestic manufacturing base deserves direct, honest assessment. The American motorcycle market has historically been defined by a particular cultural identity. There is a reason Harley-Davidson carries such emotional weight in this country. There is a reason the rumble of a V-twin on a summer highway connects to something deep in the American experience. That cultural attachment is real, and it is not going away. But cultural attachment does not insulate a market from structural technology shifts indefinitely. Imagine pulling up to a local charging station on your daily commute, plugging in for 10 minutes while you grab a cup of coffee, and then riding to work on a machine that produces more wheel torque than a Ford Mustang V8. Imagine not paying for gasoline, not changing oil every 3,000 miles, not replacing a clutch cable, not worrying about overheating at a traffic light. The total cost of owning an electric motorcycle, over a 5-year period, is substantially lower than its gasoline equivalent. Some estimates suggest fuel savings alone could equal the price of a good used car over that window. Now imagine that machine costs less than $8,000 and was designed by engineers who have spent 20 years in the most competitive electric two-wheeler market on Earth. That is the value proposition that Chinese manufacturers are bringing to Western markets right now. And while Washington bureaucrats are still debating EV mandates, and our legacy domestic manufacturers are still calculating how to protect their combustion engine profit margins, the Chinese industry has already moved past the debate phase entirely. The bikes are built, the certifications are filed, the distribution networks are being established, the market entry has already begun. The future of electric personal transportation is no longer being decided in Milwaukee. Those decisions have already been made across the Pacific. And that brings us back to the thesis that runs through everything we have covered today. While America debates, China builds. That is not a political statement. That is an industrial observation. The evidence is in the factory output, the export figures, the trade show floors, the race results, and the product specifications. China has built an electric motorcycle industry that controls over 70% of global production, that is accelerating into the premium performance segment, that is entering Western markets with competitive pricing and world-class technology, and that has the supply chain depth to sustain this growth for the decade ahead. The question this raises for every American who cares about our domestic industries, every person who believes in the workers in Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin, who built the most powerful manufacturing economy the world has ever seen, is whether we are going to respond with urgency or whether we are going to keep having the same conversation while the competitive window closes. So here is what I want to hear from you. Would you consider riding a Chinese-made electric motorcycle, given the technology and price point we have discussed today? And do you believe American manufacturers still have time to build a genuinely competitive answer, or has the structural advantage already shifted too far? Drop your honest answer in the comments. If you found value in this deep, analytical breakdown, please remember to hit that thumbs up button, share this video with someone who loves motorcycles or cares about American manufacturing, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another exclusive look into how global technology competition is reshaping the world we live in. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next analysis.